Let's talk now to Adrian Hart from the Don't Divide Us organisation. He's a campaigner for what I would call common sense, and I'm very pleased to welcome him. Adrian, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thanks very much indeed for talking to us. Why don't you just give us an outline, if you could, Adrian, of what's happened over the last few days? Was it the week before last that Brighton came up with this crazy idea?
No, it goes back a long way. In the febrile atmosphere of June 2020, Brighton and Hove Council, the Green Party and the Labour Party were fighting each other over who could be the most ostentatiously anti-racist in policy-making terms. And so the council subsequently smuggled in a 5-year anti-racist schools strategy, which only revealed its critical race thinking approach after it had been voted in.
Right.
We don't know if pupil racial literacy lessons, quote unquote, have begun yet, but we do know that the council wants schools to implement this, and we know a little bit about the racial literacy training for school staff, because that's been rolling out now since the winter of 2020. And initially to head teachers and governors, but now it's attempting to get to all the teachers in Brighton and Hove schools, nursery up. And we know that thanks to a leaked copy of this 2-hour online training going to the Sunday Telegraph recently. The council has since sent me, because my freedom of information request has been in since June last year. They finally sent me some slides from the training, but not the all-important commentary that goes with them.
Right.
And I can see that this training takes it for granted that participants will want to know the truth about systemic racism, and critical race theory is the bearer of that truth.
And so, according to a piece I'm looking at here from Spiked Online, children, they say, are not racially innocent. They attach value to skin colour, white at the top of the hierarchy and black at the bottom. It's an extraordinary statement, isn't it, to make as a matter of fact?
Yes, the problem with critical race theory is that it's a belief system, and critical race theory proponents are welcome to it, but they roll it out as though it is fact. And the example you just gave is now completely out there in the form of one of the slides that's in the Brighton Argus this morning. And the document itself, which has been online and anyone can read it, which has a paragraph called Racial Literacy for Pupils, which talks about, it kind of mocks parents for having the idea that their kids might be racially innocent. It's really reminiscent of just old-fashioned kind of religious indoctrination. It's like the hopeless unconscious kind of masses need to have the right ideas put into their heads. And I do think, whether we're talking about the consultant that has come up with this for Brighton Council or some of the leaders at the top, they are, I don't want to make them into the bad guys here. They just simply have missed especially not the consultant. They're entitled to believe critical race theory is the right way forward, but not the council. The council have a duty of care, and they've failed in that in a most extraordinary way, and in a really underhand way, to smuggle it in like that. And we have Labour and Conservative councillors here who are not happy at all.
Right. And do you suspect this is happening elsewhere in the country, Adrian? It's obviously been discovered in Brighton, but I bet you any money that it's not the only place where it's going on.
Yeah, I won't take that bet, because you're right. It's definitely out there. I can't show it to you, but you asked me if I suspect, and I do suspect. Yes.
Yes. And what is do you think the motivation? Because we talk about this a lot on my show, particularly the kind of the wokeism of civil service departments now, the academic qualifications, the problems at university with freedom of speech and all of that kind of thing. What is actually going on here, do you think?
Well, it's rooted in a very ardent belief system that preaches original sin around white supremacy. The idea that Britain is dripping in racism. is a given for CRT believers. You know, it regards all aspects of everyday life, from schooling to the untutored minds of the masses, you and me, right, as tainted by a centuries-long white supremacy. And I don't think it's I mean, certainly in Brighton, I'm constantly around people, and I think the council leaders themselves, they just think it's common sense. We have some very young council leaders in Brighton, and I just think they've just carried it from their university life into their positions of power in the city. And in a slightly innocent way, they kind of just think that is the truth. It is a set of facts that the children need to know. I would just keep stress all the time that this policy has to be scrapped now, because it's not, I mean, you can love it or loathe it or have no idea what the heck critical race theory is. It's contested, and there's actual legislation that talks about that. Kemi Badenoch talked about it a while back. But you know, really, what's going to happen now is that parents are just going to spot the proof in the pudding when they find it in their schools, in the forms of lesson plans, in their classrooms, and I think it's something especially sinister in that sense. You know, that white kids are the oppressors of their non-white classmates, and so on. And I think, you know, to end my little rant there, because I am angry about this, naturally the council will insist that they would never intend teachers to be so blunt. But this is the thing: they're inculcating teachers as missionaries for this set of ideas. Robin DiAngelo videos appear in the training, and there's no sense in which anyone is saying, oh, here's a set of ideas you might like to kind of counterbalance with perhaps, I don't know, liberal humanist education ideas that have been accepted standard for so long now. None of that. It's just put straight forward as, this is what you got to know, because it's the truth. Yes. And I look forward to seeing the council come under attack, especially as we have both Labour and Tory cross-party support against the Green leaders on this.
Right. And of course, like all of these things, there isn't any room for dissent, is there? It looks like something like 300 teachers, governors and other school staff may have completed this racial literacy training, and presumably they wouldn't have had much of an option to say, actually, I don't really want to be trained in this, so I'm not going to do it.
They would have had, at this stage, they would have had an option. It's quite carefully rolled out. So the schools are invited by the council to take this training. That the council, this being Brighton and Hove, the schools are largely on side with it. And in any case, schools across the UK who have proactive councils around diversity issues, they want to trust their councils, and if the council says do this, they'll go, okay, well, that sounds like a great thing, and they do it. So, but you talk about dissent. I mean, this goes to the very heart of the problem with anything that gets rolled out under the banner of quote unquote anti-racism. Is you have to be pretty brave to stand up to it. And no, I don't yet know any teachers who have come to me that are willing to go public with this at all. I think that what we're going to have to see now is the parents continue the push, and then as more people, and especially councillors at the town hall, put their head above the parapet, we'll see the whole pendulum swing. Yeah.
Well, you'd like to think so, but I mean, I don't have a great deal of faith in a lot of parents. I mean, these are the same parents, and I know it's a slightly different issue, who seem perfectly happy to allow their kids to be forced to wear masks in school all day. And they're quite happy for that to be going on without making much of a fuss about it, which I find also extremely weird, you know.
But I don't think that I wouldn't put that on the parent population so much. I just think you said it at the beginning that there's a real kind of free speech kind of vacuum right now. There's a lot of pressure on people on a lot of fronts to toe the line, and if they don't, they risk a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like, I've got kids at school. I mean, it's almost like they're teaching them not to argue with them. They're almost teaching them that there is only one true way, which is kind of cult-like in my view. They're not teaching children to question. They're not teaching children to be inquisitive. They're teaching them that there is only one way to be, and you have to believe in everything we tell you.
Well, I think you're right about that in respect of the critical race theory story in Brighton and like we said, probably elsewhere across the country too. But I always stick up for schools and for teachers. I think they've got a good record on these things. They do. Most teachers, and I was a teacher once, and my kid went to school through Brighton. Here he's at sixth form now. They do teach critical skills. They do weigh up different ideas. It is very much in there. It's just that what we're looking at now in the area of critical race theory, and arguably around gender issues, is our ideologues on the outside of schools sort of pushing for a complete turnaround on that. And yes, you're right. Critical thinking will have no place in a proposed racial literacy for pupils lesson.
Right. And as far as Nadhim Zahawi's intervention, what has he actually done, and what effect will his intervention have?
Well, it's so far just reported in the media, isn't it, in the press? But one can only be very hopeful at that development if it comes to pass. You just hope that it doesn't somehow dissipate. I think it looks good. I mean, that is our government taking its role seriously through the Department for Education of considering their duty of care. And I think that I know the media have been trying to get hold of leaders at the council yesterday all day, and that none of them are available. I think that this development has certainly, caused a bit of a panic to break out at the town hall, put it that way.
No bad thing, in my view.
No.
Yeah, because, I mean, they do feel as though they are becoming more and more powerful, don't they? They kind of think that they are not criticised. They don't think they can be criticised. They think that they are sort of in charge of our children, and they can pretty much teach them whatever they want.
Well, Brighton is a kind of heated up version. You can imagine here we either have a Green council or we have a Labour council here, and the Green Party has become particularly unpopular amongst the populace of Brighton lately because it circumnavigates democratic process too often, and it certainly has on this. It's that sort of almost religious zeal. We are right. We will not be challenged. We know we're so certain we're right. We won't even put out a public consultation on what is an actual 5-year strategy that is quite controversial. We won't even ask the public. We'll just have a few focus groups and tick the boxes, and in it goes. Yeah. And by the way, like I said, some of those councillors didn't even know that they were being asked to approve something that was based on a critical race theory approach. It was literally days after they voted for it in November 2020 that all those words, critical race theory and all the approach, all went back in to the various documentations. Right.
It is quite a shocking state of affairs. Well, thank you very much, Adrian, for highlighting it. We'll keep an eye on it as well, and anything we can do, by all means, do ask us to help out. If we can. If you've got kids in Brighton, you might be able to tell us something about what they're being taught. Adrian Hart, campaigner there with Don't Divide Us, on the critical race theory that the council is trying to introduce down there, which effectively says that if you are a white child, you should somehow bear all of the reasons and all of the sins of the fathers and the grandfathers, and that you should eventually accept the fact that it's your fault that the world is not a fair place to be, which is a pretty awful thing to try and put on the shoulders of some young people, isn't it?